Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Nora Harry. I'm the Director of Operations for the Vaz+Harwood team. On this video, we also have Andy Harwood of Vaz+Harwood. And Sherilyn Vaz is our other team leader. So Andy's going to provide some color as we go. And I'm just going to basically take you through what it takes to create a template in AuthentiSign and Transaction Desk. So you can speed up your PA writing, your buyer and listing representation contract writing, and just try to overall give you a smoother transaction so you have less cleanup afterwards. And you can you don't have to be working until at night. Who all like that, appreciates that? I
I'll
love it.
just I'll just jump in and say one really quick because I
Yeah.
know you want to stay on time. When I got started in real estate, I didn't have any systems. Barely knew how to use this, and even the first year, I was still. It seemed like I was always trying to do stuff. You're always under the crunch. You got to get the offer in. You're trying to figure out terms with the buyer, all that kind of stuff. Usually, purchase agreements is the biggest crunch. And as we hired Nora and really, she developed our systems and figured this out and said, "Hey, Andy, do you know it did this?" And it's like, I had no idea. I've been using it for 2 years. No idea. So now between her and our other admins, they've really gone on other admin groups and figured stuff out on their own. And they've really figured out, I mean, it takes them 10 minutes to do a purchase agreement now. So they've just streamlined.
Yeah.
So take it away, Nora,
Thank
please.
you for the lovely introduction, Andy. I love it. So hopefully some of you are experienced agents and you want to elevate your business, and some of you are brand new agents and maybe you've never even opened AuthentiSign yet, right? So hopefully everyone can get some great tips from this. So I'm pretty sure everyone knows how to do this, but just in case you've never used it, how do you get into AuthentiSign? Is you from your MLS, you go to Tools and you hit Transaction Desk.
Here's how to plug it in. Step one,
Yes.
on switch.
So you will get opened up to this homepage, this dashboard in AuthentiSign and Transaction Desk. And things have actually updated a little bit, right? So what I'm going to walk you through used to be in settings, but they've made it a lot more obvious and put it here on the side. So where we're going to be spending most of our time today is here in templates. And if we have time at the end, I'll bonus throw in clauses for you. If you've never used clauses, you're going to love it. So of course, most of you probably just live in forms and signings. So I will show you how you can apply a template to an existing transaction at the end and how you can start a new transaction from scratch with a template as well. But first, in order to use it, you got to create it. And if people have questions as we're going, please drop it in the chat. I'll keep a pretty good eye on it and answer your questions as we go. And feel free to pop in and even say, Nora, stop, wait. But again, if I go too fast, you'll get the recording of this after. So when you come into the side, you come down here to templates, you'll get two options, checklist manager and transaction templates. Checklist manager is good if you want to do it. I'm not going to cover that today. We're going straight into templates. You can see I have a lot of things in here. Some of you might have some things from your brokerage. Some of you might have nothing. Okay, that's okay. Don't worry about it. You can see that these are all the ones I use all the time: B&H team buyer rep, listing purchase agreement, etc. These other ones are all from my brokerage. These are great. I love them for agents that are using them. However, if I click into this, I can't modify this, right? So this has a whole bunch of forms that aren't pre-filled, and I love that it has all the documents for me, but I want to make it specific to me and pre-check all those options I know I have to select every time and are the exact same every buyer rep and every purchase agreement. So what I want to do is I want to make my own template. So I'm going to come in here and hit add, the plus sign. Just like if you're adding your new transaction on your transaction screen, you'll do the same thing for adding a template.
And
So
Nora, it's so nice to set up your own templates the way you do it or the way your team or partner does it, because we all have certain norms that we're used to, and we would plug in certain types of things. So this way, the number of times also that I forgot to put something in, like check the tax assessments or whatever, that would have to be cleaned up later or whatever. You can do this the way you want so that the things you normally put in 90% of the time are all there.
Yes, exactly. So name it whatever you want. You can have multiple templates. You can have one for buyer, you can have one for seller, you can have one for purchase agreement, or a buyer is the one who does it for purchase agreements. You can just make one and put all the pieces together. That's what I'm
Also,
going to do for the example.
if you do a lot of condos and townhouses, you could have one for properties with an HOA. You know, whatever. Use your imagination, whatever you do a lot of.
Okay, description is for your own purpose. It doesn't matter what you name it. So you're going to come in here to the template builder. You can always come in here and update, add things, etc. If you did build a checklist, like I showed you when you got here, you could do checklists or templates. You could add one in here, you know, like follow up with inspection, send it to title, blah, blah, blah. You could add that in. I'm not spending time on that today. But here's where you can add contacts. So think about when you start from scratch, what do you always have to add in? Your cell, your brokerage, right? And then the clients are what changes, right? Maybe an admin if you use a TC all the time and you know, you always have to send into them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come here to myself.
I was just gonna say, we don't use the checklist section in here. We have another system that we do checklists in, but if you don't have another good thing to do checklists in, you could use this.
You absolutely could.
I had
So
no
I'm
idea
adding,
checklists
yeah.
for years, so.
So I'm adding myself in as a contact, and I'm going to add my brokerage in. Oh, well, maybe I have it under this. Okay, so see, I didn't have, I don't use this so much, but here we go. So I'm just going to add a new contact, and you can do this with anything. So I'm going to add in the buyer broker, and we're going to add in okay. Right. So we've got those two added in. I'm also a big believer in admins. So obviously on our team, we have a great admin team. So we have them right here. So I'm going to add them in. And they're just going to be a general contact because then they're always going to be in there to add as a CC contact. So they get a copy of every completed contract. And I don't have to take an extra step to send it to them. Save yourself time. Work smart, not hard. All right, documents and folders. This is where if you have something you like to always put in a purchase agreement, like a cover letter or something, you can add this in from your desktop. So I'm just going to add in a document from my desktop that I've already put here. So you can drag and drop, or you can just load it in. So here, I have 3 different documents that I might choose to use. One is a PA cover with my name, my license number, and my logos. So it looks really nice and clean for a purchase agreement. One with that's the exact same thing with our closer information if they've selected for us to choose the title company. And then a buyer doc cover that explains the common Q&A. You don't have to have any kind of cover sheet if you want. We just do. And so I wanted to show you how you could upload a supplemental document. Then you'll come down here into forms. And this is where you add in all the things you're going to need, right? So you could click into each of these and really look for things, or you can just type and search. So if you haven't already had your buyer sign agency, you should add it in. I would just add it into the template, all the things you might need, even if you don't.
Excuse me.
Purchase agreement. Rep presentation. Exclusive. There you go, right there. KWBR. Keller Williams. I'm looking for my buyer one. Okay, if you don't know what you're looking for, then you could dig down into the folders. I'm just looking for my broker required disclosure form. Most of you are going to have something like this, whether you're with a Dyna or any other company.
Yeah.
So you can see it added 4, right? So you can choose to add them individually, or you can keep searching and add things. So I've put in what I need for an initial buyer rep. So I just want you to see this, and then I want to go back in and add the other parts of a purchase agreement. And of course, because I'm screen sharing, AuthentiSign wants to be a little pokey. That's okay. So you can see now they're all in here. Let me just go add in a few more pieces that I would need for a purchase agreement. And then I'm going to show you how you can go in and edit it so that all your regular buyer rep choices are selected, all your regular purchase agreement choices are selected, etc. So I already added in the purchase agreement. So with station disclosure, arbitration. If you're somebody who likes to put in the lead-based paint brochure with your buyer rep documents, you can do that this way. Unless you send it another way. Same thing with the radon docs for the PA, that kind of thing. Let's see. Amendment. Amendment to purchase agreements, because that's more common. Addendum. Hopefully you're working along with me, but it's okay. If you're not, you can always watch this and do it later. Addendum. Here we go. What else? CIC. Resale. Again, I won't need it all the time, but if I do, it's in there. Anyone can think of something that I'm missing that I might want to add?
If you work a lot in certain municipalities or in the country, you could add the well and septic.
Yes. Well inspection, if you're someone who knows you want to add the well disclosure all the time, or well inspection amendment all the time, that kind of thing.
We don't do as many of those, so it would take us more. I mean, we wouldn't have to delete it, but it just doesn't need to be there.
Yeah. If you like to use the receipt for confirming that you've received all of your association docs, that kind of thing. I think we got enough for an example of this template for us.
The point is, put in the things that you use the most so that it's efficient.
Yes. So now you can see that I have got all these documents in here. So now I want to go through and fill out some of these. You can also like drag and drop to reorder them. So if you like to go through things in a certain like order, you can do that. So for us, I like to do the cover sheet, agency, buyer rep, and then my KW disclosures. For us on a purchase agreement, I like to have a cover sheet, the MLS listing, the pre-approval of purchase agreements, comp disc, arbitration, and then these are all the things I might need later. So I put them at the bottom, right? So my agency is just a signature, so I don't have to make any pre-modifications on that. But buyer rep, there's a few selections I might be able to make / fill-ins that I can do. All right, so I can't fill in the date. I won't pre-fill that in, right? Because that's going to totally depend on when I make it. If you charge your buyers a retainer fee, you can put that in here. I can also put in 0 to clean it up. So this is shall pay buyer broker. So you can do your range, you can do your percent. We all know it's standard. A lot of listings we see 2.7. So I'm just going to put that in as an example because we see that on MLS the most often, but you don't have to put that there if that's not the way you like to operate, right? If you like to put in a contract expiration date or something, you can put in whatever you typically like to use and put it in these blanks. I'm just putting in a few examples here. Please do not feel like you need to use the same numbers that I'm using. All right. The broker is authorized to negotiate and receive compensation. Any compensation accepted by broker from seller shall or shall not reduce obligation. So we typically select shall. Normally it's residential. If you're someone who works a lot in the country, you could select farm. You could even select all of these because you're like, what if the perfect property comes up and it's like some weird kind of type of use for the property, right? Then you got your bases covered all around. Here, if you talk with them already and you know which option you're gonna have them select, that's fine. We prefer to do radio buttons here, so I'm not gonna pre-select anything there. You can put in your company here. Excuse me, my fill-in. It's gonna hopefully go away. Hopefully we don't have that stuck here. Okay, there we go. Oh, I need to turn that off. Okay, if you typically put some language here in other, you could put that in there easily enough. Amy, can you show us later how to do radio buttons? If I have time, I will show you. That's when you're in the signing system. Grace, my template that I've created a few years ago says my forms have been disabled. Is that because they're not updated? If so, how do you update the forms in template? Great question. Yes, we all know MLS likes to update their forms generally in August, and sometimes some forms earlier in the year too. So your template is great and will function for you until MLS does their form updates, right? Then they won't work and you'll need to go in and update it with the updated form. And we all know sometimes it'll update some forms, but not other forms, right? So any forms that have not been updated will still be in there and functioning. And I'll just show you when we're out of here how to add in a new form. So if you're someone who likes to put in your brokerage address.
But basically every August, you're going to want to probably check your, that would be the logical time because that's when they do the form updates.
Hopefully that stops. So then here you can add in address. And then, so this is gonna always be in there, right? So every time I send a purchase agreement, I don't have to, or send a buyer up, I don't have to re-enter this, right? So I'm just gonna hit save and exit like I normally do. And so now it will always be in there. Oh gosh, this is gonna get real annoying. Hopefully it goes away. Anyone know how to turn this off?
I'm not sure. I think it'll go away in a sec.
Okay. It's just trying to catch up with me. But Grace, to answer your question, you would come down here into forms and then you would delete, for example, let's say your brokerage updated their disclosures. You would come in here and you would delete it, right? And then you would add form here. This is how you would research. So you just need to research purchase agreement, right? We know that one gets updated the most frequently. You would come in here and you would update the buyer rep if they updated that. So I just want to go through the purchase agreement real quick to make a few selections. And then I want to show you how to apply it into a transaction, an existing one and a new one too.
Nora, are we going to talk about why we're using blue? Or
Sure. Yeah. So you'll notice that my default text was adding in blue. I did that. We do that because it's easier to, when you're reviewing it with a client, to say just skip to the blue sections, and that's where you can see where we change it from non-standard language, and that's where we filled in the blanks for you. You don't have to do that, but that's, you can change your default text from black to blue.
Good power tip.
Yes. So here we know most of the time we're working with people that are cash and financing, some kind of combination. Very rarely is it assuming, and very rarely is it contract for deed. If you do contract for deeds all the time, power to you. But I know on 99.99% of my contracts, I'm going to need zeros in there. So I went ahead and did it. I know that most of the time it will be subject to financing. So if it's not, you can always change these when you're in the transaction itself. So you always review to make sure you don't need to change one of your standard selections. However, if you know that, 98% of the time you're working with buyers that have a mortgage, it's probably safe to say you could go ahead and check these. And when you have a cash buyer, then you just change it and unselect it. All right. So if you like to fill in these numbers, or if you do ahead of time, you could do that. Otherwise, this would be on a per client basis. If you recommend people do or don't do a written statement, you could come in and pre-select this. So I'm just going to do this because a lot of times we work with written statements, but I would, of course, leave the date blank. Coming down here, if they did do a written statement, what happens to the earnest money? Well, we're going to protect our buyer. We're going to select refund it to buyer, right? Because we know that that's going to be happening. Whichever option you prefer to check here, go ahead and check it. I'm just showing you guys a few examples here, whatever you prefer to select here. Same thing, not all of these apply. Normally we leave seller contribution open because that one can change a lot. Same thing with inspection. You may or may not choose to. Generally though, seller won't agree to do invasive testing, so I'll go ahead and. Same here, you can choose to select it or not, depending on where you're at. You know, most of your buyers don't have to sell a house. You could do that. I'm leaving it open. Here is one you can generally, most of the time, free advance fill. So most of the time it's going to be prorated. And most of the time, of course, we'll protect our buyers and shall pay the difference. Again, you might choose to see different defaults. I'm just showing you an example here of the ones we're most often going to do. So most of the time we're going to these again, most of the time, these ones apply. It could be different for you.
Quick question for you.
Yes.
Hi, this is Adam Hunt. So let's say we do have a default in here, and let's say we get to the purchase agreement and we do need to edit it. Is this like locked and loaded forever, or like is it easily editable later on in the transaction?
Yes. So that's why I don't want to spend too much time on filling out every form here. So as soon as I get done with the purchase agreement, we're going to go apply it to a transaction. I'll show you how easy it is to change.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, unless you work in the country, if you work primarily in St. Paul, right, and Minneapolis, and you're not out in farm country, you're probably going to be city water, city sewage, right? If you're working a lot in farm country, you may not want to fill this because they might, you know, be in a well or something. But for the purposes of me making this template, I'm going to go with what we see most often. And then here, this is me as a buyer. So I know that it's going to fill in the seller's agent and the buyer agent as us. So, excuse me. If you typically put in some kind of other language like seller to obtain the city inspection and certificate of approval, you could put that in here. But again, that could be more of a clause that you add in later.
We got one power tip for this. We always put in here as in our template what the instructions are when it's pending.
Yes.
You know, like buyer's agent to be listed, selling agent to be listed as Andy Harwood, MLS, NERDS number, whatever.
And then co-selling agent to be Vaz+Harwood
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
Because we're on a team, right? So we want the team and the agent to get credit, right? If you, again, you could pre-select lead-based paint on here because it happens a lot, but if you primarily deal with newer homes, you might not want to select that, right? So we'll come down here and you're like, okay, that looks pretty good and filled out. I'm going to save and exit. Okay, let's pretend now that we went through and we filled out all the other typical things, right? We put in an address on comp disc, we put in our broker fee on the comp disc, that kind of thing. So we'll just pretend we did all of that already. So I'm just going to hit update and I'm going to come back to my practice transaction, right? So I just want to show you how to do this on an existing transaction, right? Let's say you built out your purchase agreement template and you have a buyer you're working with now that already signed representation and you're like, oh, I really want to apply my new PA template to them. Well, guess what? You can. Short and sweet. So we're going to come in here to the transaction. We're going to hit the 3 magic dots that can do so much. And we're going to hit apply template. So easy. So this buyer transaction, that's the one I just made. I'm going to hit apply. Eek. Amazing. All right. Who has a listing or has a property that they're taking a buyer to later today? I just want to throw in an address. Anybody? Andy is muted. He's making a suggestion.
Sorry, if nobody else has one, you can put in 9624 173rd. 9624.
Okay, so this is, let's say this is my buyer. We went and saw this property. I want to make an offer on this my buyer wants to make an offer on this property, guess what? We're gonna pull it into AuthentiSign. It's gonna open in a new window. It's gonna ask me if I want to make a new transaction and if I want to apply my template, and I'll say yes. Okay, so you see it's already pulling in everything. Offer for template right here, buyer transaction. If I hadn't already applied this template, and I add me as the buyer tenant, create. Okay, hopefully it doesn't take too long. We all know AuthentiSign sometimes can make us grind our gears, right? It's like pending. Okay, so I just want to show you what this looks like now that we made the template, right? Remember, I added myself as an agent and I added my brokerage in here too, right? It's a little bit different when you import. It's going to add the brokerage twice. You'll see that, but that's okay. So this is a brand new one. I hadn't preset this up, right? Contacts, look, it added in me and it added in my broker. So I just want to show why it did this, because I imported it from MLS as me with my brokerage. If, like the previous one, I applied it to the template and I hadn't already added this in, it would just be in there one time. It's okay that it's in there twice. It's not gonna break anything, right? But you can see it added in the seller agent, the brokerage, all that stuff. And my admin team is in here too, right? So I can easily add them as a CC contact on my signing. So, and then it's going to show me my forms next. They're all in there. I don't have to go in and add them individually. Okay, so of course you can finish the wizard, or you can do this while you're in the wizard. So I'm just going to click on my purchase agreement, and I've talked with my buyer, right? I know what I want to add, right? I didn't even look at the list price of this house. So we're just, but look, it auto added things. But look, there's my zeros that are already in there. There's my selections on mortgage, because I know they're using financing. There's my selection on written statement. It's already in there. So Adam, to your question, I'm coming in here. I'm going to add the date of today, right? If my buyers were in there, I'd be adding it in here. We're going to do $5,000 earnest money, etc. Right? Let's say this one's all cash buyer, not a mortgage. So I need to make a change, right? 100% cash, 0% mortgage financing. 500,000. We're just picking stuff to move quick, right? They're all cash. They're going to close real soon, right? Adam, look how easy this is. I unselect it. I select it. Pretty easy. So you don't have to worry about changing stuff or being locked into any selections. You can easily change them and modify them as you need. So then I'll come down here. None of this applies. I don't need a written statement because it's cash. So I'm unselecting that, right? None of these matter. I don't need them, right? I'm changing, I'm unselecting them super simply, right? And then I come down and they do want an inspection, and it is contingent on inspection, all that good stuff, right? I'm do 5 days, etc. Save and exit, that kind of thing. Any questions up to this point? Is anyone's mind being blown? Are you like super excited? Someone give me a party emoji. I love it. Adam gave me a party emoji.
I love it.
Yes, claps from Scott. Love it. All right. So one thing I do want to show you too. Oh, Sherilyn, our CEO, is dancing in the background. I love it. So I want to show you clauses real quick too, and then I want to add a clause in PA to, again, save you time. All right, clauses. Your office might have a few in here, they might not, but if you have language that you use all the time, right? And you're like, I don't want to rewrite this again, or like, what was that language I wrote that was really good that one time for inspection? Or I wrote that appraisal gap and I have to look it up every time I go back to Susie's transaction to see that language that I wrote that, my lender recommended. You don't have to do that. You can
I used to either keep them off on a notepad to copy and paste, or I would just have to rewrite the whole thing all the time.
Yes. So you can see I've already got a few in here. Oh, hold on. I've already got quite a few in here. So for example, Agent disclosure, buyer is the licensed real estate agent, that kind of thing. Full appraisal gap coverage. So I've written this already. So in the event of low appraisal, buyer to pay any difference between appraisal price and purchase price in cash. Okay. If I wanted to modify that, I could. Escalation clause, right? If in multiple offers, buyer will increase offer price to, you could put XXX in here too, to help you remember to change it. If you want, over the next highest net offer, not to exceed XXX price, right? Seller should substantiate with pages of purchase agreement of next highest net offer. Okay. So per Andy's old way, he would copy this, right? He would have this in a notepad and he would copy it and then he'd go back into his purchase agreement and he'd add it, right? So I just want to show you how you can add the clause. And same thing with add clause. You'll have the little plus sign up here to add a clause. You can add your title, all that kind of thing. So if you're like Andy and you used to copy paste, right? You would come down here to page 11, the other section. I'm scrolling too fast for it to keep up. But look, you can see it added in my seller's agent and me as the buyer's agent. Pretty slick. And I didn't have to make that selection. So here, Andy would go like this, okay? Because I'm a smart agent, I put in my clauses. I'm just gonna come here and I'm gonna add in my escalation clause. And you can add in multiple ones at a time. You see, look, it just added it in from the clause. Oh, but I remembered I'm an agent and I'm buying a property, right? So I want to add in another one. You can add in multiple clauses at a time. You don't need to do like, 15,000 combinations of every type of thing you might do, right? You can just do this. Buyer's list and real sales. Look, this one has like literally a bunch of combinations. I don't need, 3 of these. Boom, I just deleted it from my, edited it. Saved a lot of time. So, all right, I'm going to hit save and exit. And I used my template successfully. I saved myself a lot of time. And now I could pull it into a transaction and be pretty much ready to go. Thoughts,
Great.
questions?
Great, Nora.
Would you mind sharing all your clause templates? We can certainly share some of them with you. You might choose to want to use different language. But what we can do is we can send a document when we send the recording with some of the ones that we see a lot that we use.
No, they're not a trade
You
secret.
might want, yeah, they're not. You've probably received them on transactions too, but again, you want to make sure it works for you and the way you operate your business.
Slightly off topic, but here's what we do with clauses. We have ours, and if we get a PA on one of our listings with a really good one, we're like, oh, we should use that. And then we just lift what we like of it. I mean, everyone does that.
Prove it, right?
Right?
We used to just have buyers to substantiate with page 1 of purchase agreement, right? And then somebody else was like, remember you need to have the seller pays part, and then what if someone has an escalation on page 11? So then we add it to the page.
Yeah.
All right. We have a few more minutes, so I just want to show you the radio button since I got a request on that. And then I'm happy to do other Q&A, show other examples as we go.
Yeah, if you have any other questions or thoughts, just feel free to pop them in.
Yep. So let's say that I'm all good to go, right? Well, I won't do the purchase agreement one. I'm just going to do the buyer up because it's shorter, less to import. So let's say I just hadn't already signed agency, I'm just going to include it in my package and take it into a signing. And this way too, you can see how my admin team is already in there as a contact, and it's really easy to see it to them. And if you've never used the CC function and you use a TC, I recommend adding it in. They're gonna love you if you start automatically CCing them on your contracts.
So, Nora, we put in radio buttons for all of the optional things that a buyer could select, just to make sure that they're making the selection. We just do that as standard practice.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So if I add participants from transaction, these are all the people that I had in my transaction. So I'm going to add myself. I'm going to add my admin team as a CC contact. And then I'm going to add in myself as the agent. Normally, if you hadn't imported something from MLS, you wouldn't have a listing agent. But I'm just going to also plug in there. If I'm writing a PA and you are someone who likes to just CC it to the agent, please send an introductory email so it doesn't get missed. Because I have seen people who do CC us when they're sending an offer and it has gone to spam, it has gone to junk, because it was coming from some other agent's AuthentiSign, and you don't want it to be missed. Plus, putting an introduction email when you're sending an offer always goes. Okay, so that's my 2 cents on it.
My 2 cents is we're getting paid enough that we can type one email to send to the agent and make a nice intro rather than just clicking that checkbox.
Yes. So I'm just in here as the contact and the buyer, right? So I'm just gonna. Well, maybe I'll just add in another. Okay, so it doesn't like that I'm gonna.
It won't matter. Just
Yeah.
use yourself. Yeah.
Well, here I'm just gonna add from contacts. Let's say there's somebody else that needs to add in, right? So I'm gonna add in one of our awesome TC. Who's gonna move the buyer, right? Just for the purposes, right? So it automatically adds her in, right? But remember, I'm someone who has a cover sheet that I like to add, right? So I'm going to come down here, and you can see down here is my PA cover, my buyer doc cover. So I'm going to choose to add that in. PS, did you know that it imports all the disclosures from MLS here at the bottom? If you've imported something, it's really easy to sign the disclosures. You just add it into the transaction. I think most of you probably already knew that, but just in case anybody didn't, I hope I just. It didn't used to do that. You used to have to download it, re-upload it, but now it's.
Yep, I remember.
So I want my buyer doc to go at the top, so it looks like a nice little package when it's sent to them for electronic signing. So that looks so pretty and nice. So let me come down here and show you radio buttons. I would have added the date, I would have added the buyer and the transaction side of things, but if you forgot, right, you could just come down in here and be like, shoot, I didn't add their name. Oh, there you go, right? And oh, there's my auto date. You can do it however you want, right? You can add a text box here if you forgot to do it the way you wanted. If you wanted to modify this, you should have done it on the other side, but again, you could put a text box over it. I'll blow somebody's mind here. I'm going to put a text box over here. I'm going to take out the transparent background. Let's say. Right, there's so much you can do. Well, normally you can make this smaller, but I'm not gonna. Oh, there was a little thing to make it smaller. But yeah, that's how you could, quick modify something on the fly. All right, so radio buttons. Here you go. Radio choice. I will add. MLS has been having. Sometimes they've been a little goofy lately, but generally they work pretty well. So now this will give them a choice. They have to select one or the other option, right? So if you haven't had a discussion with them and you don't know which option they're going to choose, right? They can choose the radio.
And remember, if you have 2 buyers on a PA, only one can make the selections.
Correct.
So pick the one who's the more responsible of the 2.
Unless for some reason
Responsive.
in another set of radio buttons, but I don't recommend that because Susie selects yes, Tom selects no, right? Yeah. But you're like, oh, you assigned this to the wrong person. Guess what? You could put that. Boom, you can just change it, right? But of course, I'm the agent, so I'm not going to pick the radio buttons. Change it back to mobile. Okay, who also seems to have the same initials as me. Nora, Harry, Nina, Herrera. There we go. So, and then again, here's a radio button here. But again, if you knew, you could put a text box, a checkbox if you already talked to them about what request, make that kind of thing. But again, look, see, here is all my brokerage information in there.
Great.
Yeah. So that's how you do a template. That's how you do a clause. That's how you do a radio button. I'm going to stop the recording now. But if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to hang out and answer for you.
Thank you.